The reason why this feels better than this is the same reason why you hate this. And you would rather have this. Our tech has gotten infinitely better, but in order to get there, we had to sacrifice away the physical side of tech. Buttons and controls are gone in favor of sleek touch interfaces for everything. Atoms have been replaced by pixels. But recently, something curious is happening. Last year's iPhone main feature was a button, and this year's iPhone main feature will likely be another button. The latest tech is not some futuristic breakthrough, but rather going back to being physical. And no, this is not just nostalgia. There's a deeper reason for this. So what the hell is happening and what does this mean for the future of tech? Well, it all starts with us wanting to control technology. Because back then, it was straightforward. Press a lever, turn a gear, and you can see the machine actually move. Wanna turn on the engine of your Ford Model T? Well, I hope you didn't skip the gym lately. But then, buttons. Press the button and the light turns on. The elevator arrives, a photo is taken. Now a small push of your fingers triggers something completely different. Buttons take away control and put it behind something effortless. It's almost a luxury, and well, it was. Look at these ads from the 1940s and 50s. They all use the word push button as a synonymous for easy and effortless. The idea of starting a car with a push of a button was something incredibly luxurious. In 1939, they built the vision for the house of the future. And it's all about effortless control. Push the button and it's done. But now we come to a problem. With technology, we can do more things, more complex things. And so the only thing we can do is, well, add more buttons. For a period of time, having the most complex looking device with the most buttons was synonymous with advanced, high-tech, and cool, which is basically the opposite of today, where cool is slick and minimalist. Technology was becoming more complex, but with it, also the way to control the technology was becoming more complex. The Concorde was one of the most complex pieces of analog machinery ever created, and its physical controls looked like this. So, wait a minute. Your phone today has 1,000 times more complexity than all these devices, and yet it only has 3 buttons. And this is the reason why digital interfaces have completely taken over the world. Because it breaks the idea that complex technologies need complex control. We move the complexity from hardware to software, from atoms to pixels. And funnily enough, the way you design good digital interfaces is by copying as much as possible from physical ones. Let me show you. So this is a button, but what is wrong here? There's nothing that tells me that it does something when it's clicked. So let's make it look more like the physical one. But still, it looks off. See, when I touch a physical buttons, the button physically moves. The light changes how it reflects on the surface. So let's copy that in our digital button with a press state animation to make it feel better. Cool, but it still feels weird. The button does its action as soon as I touch it, but that's not how physical buttons work. They only trigger once you press them down to the bottom. So let's change our button so that it triggers the action only when I release the tap, not when I start the tap. These are a few of the thousands of ways our digital interfaces have been shaped by our physical ones. For example, you know these buttons, right? They allow you to select one thing at a time. They're called radio buttons. And where do they come from? Well, look at this. Physical radio buttons on actual radios. Of course, you can select just one frequency at a time to listen to. And today we take our digital interfaces for granted. But this transition from physical to digital took quite a mindset shift for people. In 1984, Apple took a 20-page ad in a magazine just to explain digital user interfaces to people. How you have a mouse and you point on things with the mouse and this is a button. It sounds so silly today, but these things had to be explained. But something that didn't exist in the physical world, but that can help you out is the sponsor of this video, Vanta. If you are starting or scaling a company, you want to build your product and focus just on that. You don't want to deal with security and compliance, and this is why Vanta manages this all for you. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while you build trust with your customers. Your company's security reviews get easier with automated questionnaires, and you can demonstrate your security posture with Vanta Trust Center. Over 8,000 global companies use Vanta, and you can join them by clicking the link below or following the QR code on screen, which gets you $1,000 off Vanta. And now back to the video, because removing controls and making everything digital also changed how technology is actually built. Because with physical controls, well, you cannot change them once they're out in the world. While Spotify can add the new lyrics feature with an app update for every one of their users worldwide, Nintendo couldn't just ship a new button to the Game Boy. And this completely changed how we build technology. In the past, any tech product, whether it's software or hardware, was very thoroughly planned and tested before release. But today we are able to ship much more and much faster because, well, we don't need to be as careful. If there's a bug, push an update and it's done. And yeah, this also means that many new release products are a buggy mess. And this transition from physical interfaces to digital ones got supercharged when we realized that
the problem with them, it's this stuff right here. It doesn't work because the buttons and the controls can't change.
And so we chipped away physical controls more and more. Android phones started with 4 buttons and a physical trackball, but over the years we got rid of them one by one. The car industry has become the most annoying and frustrating example of this, as they turn expensive fixed-in-place buttons into touchscreen controls for everything, with Tesla being the most hardcore of them all, where you need to use a touchscreen even to open your glove box. And I mean, who blames them? Adding a touchscreen is way easier than designing, manufacturing, and shipping an array of complex buttons and knobs. And most importantly, it's cheaper. And so, that's it. Atoms have become pixels, and physical controls are dead. Or are they? It's 2016 and Apple just launched the Touch Bar on their new MacBook Pros. It could display useful information in context, you can use it to skim through a video or a timeline, and you still have all your settings. The digital finally took over the physical with something better. And people hated it. And they hated it so much that Apple went back on their tracks. And the new MacBook Pros from 2021 onwards went back to physical buttons, and they are regarded as one of the best products that Apple has ever made. Now that you can have any game you want on your phone with console-level graphics, sales of handheld consoles that emulate old games are up. This weird console called the Playdate even has a manual crank, just like that Ford Model T, and it keeps selling out. Tesla owners are buying aftermarket buttons to add to their car to make it physical again. The hot new gadget covered by the press is an external physical keyboard for your phone. It's almost like a rebellion to go back to the physical. For the iPhone 15, the biggest feature they added was a button, and everyone went. They did it again with the Apple Watch Ultra and the action button. We pushed the accelerator so hard on making everything digital, but we went too far because the tech world forgot something. If you go to any school or any office in the world, you'll eventually hear this. If I give you a drill, what do? Yes, exactly. Interacting through buttons and knobs in the physical world is in our human nature. And we've gotten to a point where the need for physical controls is more important than having the latest advanced features. Now, no one wants to get back to this. Digital technology is amazing. And people have been finding new ways to bring the physical back into it. Like the custom keyboard community, which starts with you wondering why would anyone spend $400 on a custom keyboard? Only to end up 1 year later spending $400 on building your own custom keyboard. Tech is rebounding and reintroducing back the physical. And no, this doesn't just mean adding more buttons. Haptic displays are a technology that flied under the radar in the last decade. This is a video from CES 2017, where you have a touchscreen display that can replicate bumps and surfaces and physical controls on the screen dynamically. Or the Smart Knob, a configurable knob that blends digital and physical interfaces, that can rotate freely or be limited and have friction in it. And while these haven't caught on in the mainstream yet, the blend of physical and digital technologies is going to be so much more important in the future. And sometimes having physical fixed controls instead of a touchscreen can turn from a limitation into something iconic and successful. This is the OP1, a synthesizer made by Teenage Engineering that replaces screens and screens of complex settings with 4 knobs and a few buttons. And the digital part on the screen is uniquely designed to work specifically with the buttons and knobs, making this professional music tool so playful and fun to use. Oh, and this thing is from 2010, but it's still used to this day by your favorite artists to make records. Because another pro of blending the digital and the physical is that it stands the test of time way better. Jump into a 10-year-old car, and what is the biggest sign that this is not new? Well, of course, the crappy media controls on touchscreen. Bugatti, for their Chiron hypercar, ditched the touchscreen and went for these digital physical hybrid knobs, so that in 100 years the car still looks timeless, but you can still, control AC. And this blend of atoms and pixels is what really gets me excited about the tech of the future. But what if we looked at it completely the wrong? This is a baby that is used to using an iPad, and he applies the same mental model to a physical magazine, trying to touch it. Now, this return to the physical in tech comes from people that lived in an age with actual physical tech to begin with. I grew up playing with my Game Boy and fiddling with desktop computers, but I wonder, would a generation that is born and grew up solely with iPads and screens ever feel the need for actual physical tech? Well, I don't have an answer to that, but I have a feeling that there is something inherently universal about seeing a big red button and cannot help but press it. And by pressing the button, you've unlocked the incredible stories that no one knows about behind the tech you use every day. For example, how without Luke Skywalker, Photoshop wouldn't exist. And you can learn all about these in this video right here. I'm Enrico, and I'll see you in the next one.